Emotional detachment is one of the most misunderstood strengths a human being can develop. Many people hear the word detachment and immediately associate it with coldness, distance, or indifference. They imagine someone who no longer feels, who shuts down, or who disconnects from life. This misunderstanding keeps countless people trapped in emotional suffering because they believe the only alternative to pain is numbness. That belief is false. Emotional detachment is not the absence of feeling. It is the absence of emotional captivity. It is the ability to experience life fully without being controlled by every emotion, thought, reaction, or external event. It is strength refined, not erased. To understand the power of emotional detachment, you must first understand what most people are actually experiencing. Most people are not feeling emotions. They are being carried by them. A comment shifts their mood. A look changes their confidence. A delay creates anxiety. A disagreement becomes a threat. Their inner state is constantly negotiated by the outside world. This is not sensitivity. This is dependence. Emotional detachment is the skill of reclaiming your inner authority. It is the realization that while you cannot control what happens around you, you can control how deeply it enters you. You stop allowing every external stimulus to define your internal state. This does not make you less human. It makes you more grounded. True detachment allows you to care deeply without suffering deeply. It allows you to love without losing yourself, to engage without being consumed, to listen without collapsing, to respond without reacting. Most emotional pain does not come from events themselves. It comes from attachment to meaning, meaning layered by the mind, meaning rooted in fear, identity, and expectation. Emotional detachment removes unnecessary meaning. It strips experience down to what is real rather than what is imagined. When you are emotionally attached, every situation becomes personal. Silence becomes rejection. Feedback becomes judgment. Distance becomes abandonment. Emotional detachment dissolves this distortion. You see events as events, not as verdicts on your worth. This is why emotionally detached people appear calm under pressure. They are not suppressing emotion. They are not denying pain. They are simply not amplifying it with story and identity. They feel the moment and let it pass. Strength is often confused with intensity, but intensity is usually a sign of inner instability. True strength is steadiness, the ability to remain centered when others are reactive, the ability to stay clear when emotions rise, the ability to choose response instead of being dragged by impulse. Emotional detachment is what gives you this steadiness. It creates space between stimulus and response. In that space lives choice. And choice is power. When you are not emotionally detached, you react automatically. Your nervous system decides before your mind has a chance to speak. Detachment slows the process. It gives your awareness time to enter the moment. And awareness changes everything. Awareness allows you to notice what you are feeling without becoming it. It allows you to say, something is happening inside me instead of this is who I am. That shift alone weakens emotional suffering. Detachment also protects your energy. Emotional reactivity is exhausting. Overthinking drains you. Rumination keeps you stuck. Detachment conserves energy by preventing unnecessary emotional expenditure. You stop fighting internal battles that never needed to exist. This conserved energy becomes clarity, focus, and confidence. Emotionally detached people do not waste themselves on imagined threats or unresolved narratives. They deal with what is in front of them, not what their mind projects. Another powerful aspect of detachment is freedom from approval. When you are emotionally attached, you need validation to feel safe. Praise lifts you. Criticism wounds you. Silence unsettles you. Detachment breaks this dependence. Your sense of worth stabilizes internally. You still appreciate feedback. You still value connection. But your identity no longer hangs in the balance of every interaction. This internal stability is deeply attractive and deeply powerful. People trust those who are not easily shaken. They listen to those who do not overreact. They respect those who remain calm under pressure. Emotional detachment also changes how you experience conflict. Instead of escalating emotionally, you remain grounded. Instead of defending yourself, you seek clarity. Instead of reacting, you observe. This alone de-escalates many situations before they grow. Detachment is not avoidance. You do not run from difficult conversations. You face them without emotional distortion. You speak more clearly because fear is not driving your words. Many people fear detachment because they believe their emotions are what give them depth, meaning, and passion. But emotional depth does not come from emotional chaos. It comes from presence. Detachment increases presence because your mind is no longer hijacked by reaction. You experience life more vividly when you are not constantly defending your identity. You hear more. You see more. You feel more accurately. Emotional detachment also strengthens resilience. When you are not fused with emotion, setbacks lose their power to define you. Failure becomes information, not identity. Rejection becomes redirection, not condemnation. Pain becomes experience, not imprisonment. This resilience is not forced. It is natural when identity loosens its grip. The art of emotional detachment is not about withdrawing from life. It is about entering life without armor and without chains. You are open but not exposed. Engaged but not entangled. This is the balance most people never learn. Detachment teaches you that emotions are visitors, not masters. They arrive, they communicate, and they leave. You do not need to build a home for each one. You do not need to obey every impulse they bring. When you stop obeying emotions automatically, they lose their control. Not because you suppress them, but because you understand them. Emotional detachment also restores trust in yourself. When you know you can handle your inner world, you stop fearing emotional discomfort. Fear of emotion is what gives emotion power. When that fear dissolves, emotional intensity softens. You realize you do not need to avoid pain to be safe. You need to relate to it differently. This realization changes everything. As you continue through this audiobook, you will not be asked to become distant, cold, or uncaring. You will be asked to become disciplined. Disciplined with attention, disciplined with interpretation, disciplined with reaction. You will learn how to observe without absorbing, how to care without carrying, how to stay open without being wounded. Emotional detachment is not the end of feeling. It is the beginning of freedom. This is the strength you are about to build. Emotional attachment feels natural. It feels human. It feels like caring. But much of what people call caring is actually fear wearing a softer name. Fear of loss. Fear of rejection. Fear of being unimportant. Emotional attachment is not love itself. It is the belief that your inner stability depends on something outside of you staying the same. This belief is where suffering begins. When you are emotionally attached, your peace becomes conditional. It depends on how others behave, how situations unfold, how the future looks. When conditions are met, you feel safe. When they are not, you feel threatened. This creates a constant inner tension because life does not stay still long enough to keep those conditions intact. Emotional attachment ties your sense of self to outcomes you cannot control. It links your worth to approval, your calm to certainty, your happiness to people staying consistent. The moment reality shifts, which it always does, your nervous system reacts as if something essential has been taken from you. This is why attachment hurts. Most suffering is not caused by what happens. It is caused by the resistance to what happens. Emotional attachment strengthens that resistance. It says this should not change. This should not end. This should not feel this way. Life does not respond to should. Life responds to movement. When you emotionally attach, you freeze movement. You try to hold moments, people, and identity still, but everything is in motion. When you grip what is moving, friction occurs. That friction is pain. Attachment also creates fear-based interpretation. You stop seeing events clearly. You see them through the lens of loss. Silence becomes abandonment. Distance becomes rejection. Change becomes danger. The mind exaggerates threat because it believes something vital is at stake. That something is usually identity. Emotional attachment often forms around identity rather than reality. You attach to being seen a certain way, being needed, being chosen, being important. When something threatens that image, the reaction feels intense, not because the situation is severe, but because the identity feels exposed. Attachment tells you that without this person, this role, this outcome, you will be less than you are now. This belief is rarely true, but it feels true because the nervous system reacts before logic arrives. Emotional attachment also creates dependency. You begin to rely on others to regulate your emotions. Their mood determines yours. Their attention determines your sense of value. Their reassurance determines your peace. This is an unstable system because other people are not consistent regulators. They are managing their own inner worlds. The more attached you become, the more vulnerable you feel. And the more vulnerable you feel, the tighter you attach. This loop feeds anxiety control and emotional exhaustion. Another form of suffering created by attachment is overthinking. When something matters too much, the mind refuses to let go. It replays conversations. It imagines outcomes. It searches for certainty where none exists. This mental noise is not wisdom. It is fear trying to regain control. Detachment ends this cycle by removing the false belief that control equals safety. When you detach emotionally, you stop demanding guarantees from life. You accept uncertainty as a condition of being alive rather than a threat to your existence. This acceptance relaxes the nervous system. When the nervous system relaxes, the mind quiets. Emotional attachment also magnifies disappointment. When expectations are high and rigid reality rarely meets them perfectly, the gap between expectation and reality becomes a source of frustration. Detachment softens expectation, not by lowering standards but by releasing rigidity. You still care. You still aim. But you are not shattered when things unfold differently. Another reason attachment creates suffering is that it narrows perception. When you are attached, you see only one outcome as acceptable. Everything else feels like failure. Detachment widens perception. It allows you to see alternatives, redirection, lessons, opportunities hidden in change. This does not mean you stop preferring certain outcomes. It means you stop believing that only one outcome can make you whole. Attachment also fuels emotional reactivity. When something you are attached to is threatened, your reaction is fast, intense, and often unmeasured. You say things you regret. You defend unnecessarily. You collapse or attack. Detachment slows reaction. It creates space for choice. Choice transforms experience. It is important to understand that attachment is learned. It often forms early when safety depended on external factors. Approval meant protection. Attention meant survival. Consistency meant safety. The nervous system learned to cling. As an adult, that same strategy causes suffering because the environment has changed, but the pattern remains. Detachment is not the removal of care. It is the updating of strategy. It teaches the nervous system that you are safe even when things change, that you can feel discomfort without being destroyed. That loss is painful but not annihilating. That uncertainty is uncomfortable but survivable. When the nervous system learns, this attachment loosens naturally. Not through force, but through trust. Another subtle way attachment creates suffering is by distorting love. Love becomes possession. Presence becomes expectation. Care becomes control. Detachment restores love to its original form. Free, open, and unforced. You can love deeply without gripping. You can care without clinging. You can be committed without being consumed. This kind of love is calmer, stronger, and more sustainable. Emotional attachment also keeps you tied to the past. You replay what was, what should have been, what you lost. Detachment brings you back to now. Life only happens now. Suffering often lives elsewhere. When you detach from the need for things to be different, you regain access to the present moment. In the present, there is always more stability than the mind predicts. Detachment does not erase grief. It allows grief to move. Attachment freezes grief into identity. Detachment lets it flow through and transform. This is why emotionally detached people recover faster. Not because they feel less, but because they do not trap emotion in narrative. Understanding that attachment creates suffering is not meant to shame attachment. Attachment developed to protect you. Thank it, then release it. You are not meant to live clinging to outcomes. You are meant to live responding to reality. As this part closes, understand this clearly. The goal is not to stop caring. The goal is to stop binding your peace to conditions you cannot control. Detachment is not loss. It is liberation, and it is the foundation of everything that follows. One of the biggest fears people carry when they hear the word detachment is the fear of losing themselves. They imagine becoming distant, flat, unfeeling, or disconnected from life. They fear that emotional detachment means shutting down the heart or cutting off emotion entirely. This fear keeps many people trapped in emotional suffering because they believe the only alternative to pain is numbness. This belief is not only incorrect, it is harmful. Detachment and numbness are not the same state. In fact, they are opposites. Numbness is the absence of feeling caused by overwhelm. Detachment is the presence of awareness without emotional entanglement. Numbness disconnects you from life. Detachment connects you to life without drowning in it. Numbness happens when emotions are too intense and the nervous system shuts down to survive. It is a protective response. You stop feeling not because you are strong, but because you are overloaded. Detachment, on the other hand, comes from strength and regulation. You feel emotions fully, but you do not fuse with them. A numb person avoids emotion. A detached person allows emotion. This distinction is critical. Many people who say they want detachment are actually seeking relief from pain without realizing they are flirting with shutdown. They want the pain gone immediately, but pain that is pushed away does not disappear. It goes underground. It shows up later as anxiety, irritability, emptiness, or depression. True detachment does not push emotion away. It changes your relationship with it. When you are numb, you are absent. When you are detached, you are present. Presence is the key difference. Detachment allows you to feel sadness without becoming sad as an identity. It allows you to feel anger without becoming aggressive. It allows you to feel fear without panicking. Numbness removes these experiences entirely, along with joy, connection, and meaning. Detachment sharpens perception. Numbness dulls it. Emotionally detached people are not cold. They are clear. They are responsive instead of reactive. They can sit with discomfort without needing to escape it. This ability gives them depth, not emptiness. Numbness often looks calm from the outside but feels empty inside. Detachment looks calm and feels grounded inside. The confusion between these two states comes from misunderstanding emotional strength. Many people think strength means not feeling. In reality, strength means feeling without being ruled. Emotion is not the enemy. Unconscious reaction is. Detachment teaches you how to hold emotion in awareness rather than being swept away by it. You feel the wave without letting it pull you under. This is a skill, not a personality trait. When someone becomes numb, they stop engaging with life because engagement feels dangerous. When someone becomes detached, they engage more fully because they trust themselves to remain intact. Numbness creates distance from others. Detachment creates healthy boundaries. A numb person withdraws. A detached person stays present. This difference shows up clearly in relationships. Numbness shuts down intimacy. Detachment makes intimacy safer. When you are detached, you can listen without taking things personally. You can care without absorbing. You can support without sacrificing yourself. Numbness says, I cannot feel this. Detachment says, I can feel this and remain steady. Another important difference is that numbness is often unconscious. People do not choose numbness. It happens when the system is overwhelmed. Detachment is conscious. It is chosen repeatedly through awareness and discipline. Numbness numbs both pain and pleasure. Detachment preserves both. This is why emotional detachment actually increases joy. When you stop amplifying suffering, you make space for peace. When peace becomes familiar, joy returns naturally. Many people fear that if they stop reacting, they will stop caring. The opposite is true. Reactivity is often fear-based, not love-based. Detachment removes fear from caring. You care because you choose to, not because you are compelled. Another way to understand this difference is through control. Numbness is loss of control. Detachment is self-control. Numbness happens to you. Detachment is practiced by you. When you are numb, you feel disconnected from your values. When you are detached, your values guide your responses. Detachment strengthens your identity instead of erasing it. You know who you are, even when emotions rise. Numbness blurs identity. People often feel lost when numb. Detachment also improves decision-making. When emotions are present but regulated, you can think clearly. When emotions are suppressed, they leak into decisions unconsciously. When emotions overwhelm decisions become impulsive, detachment creates balance. Another sign you are detached and not numb is recovery. Detached people recover quickly after emotional moments. Numb people stay flat and disconnected for long periods. Detachment allows emotion to move through and complete its cycle. This movement is healthy. Emotions are designed to pass. They become problematic only when they are resisted or fused with identity. Detachment also increases self-trust. When you know you can feel without falling apart, you stop fearing emotion. Fear of emotion is what drives avoidance and shutdown. When fear dissolves, numbness is no longer needed. Detachment does not require becoming stoic or distant. It requires becoming present and disciplined. Disciplined with attention. Disciplined with interpretation. Disciplined with reaction. You stop asking, "How do I stop feeling?" and start asking, "How do I relate to what I feel?" This shift changes everything. You begin to notice emotions as signals rather than commands. Information rather than instructions. Experiences rather than definitions. Numbness hides pain. Detachment reveals it gently and allows it to move. This is why detachment heals, while numbness delays healing. If you have ever felt emotionally exhausted, detached from joy, or disconnected from meaning, it is important to understand that numbness is not peace. Peace has warmth. Peace has clarity. Peace allows feeling without chaos. Detachment leads to peace. Numbness blocks it. As you continue learning this art, you will not be asked to shut down your emotions. You will be asked to strengthen your capacity to hold them. You will learn how to stay present with intensity without being consumed, how to remain open without being wounded, how to feel deeply without drowning. This is emotional maturity. This is the difference between surviving life and living it with clarity. Detachment is not becoming less human. It is becoming fully human without suffering unnecessarily. And this distinction will guide everything that comes next. One of the most powerful skills you can develop on the path of emotional detachment is the ability to observe without absorbing. This single shift changes how you experience people's situations and even your own inner world. It is the difference between being aware and being overwhelmed. Between being present and being pulled under, most emotional suffering comes. It's not from what happens, but from what you take inside and make personal. Absorbing emotions, thoughts, and energies that are not yours quietly destabilizes you. Observation restores balance. To observe without absorbing means you witness what is happening without letting it define you. You notice emotions without becoming them. You hear words without turning them into judgments about your worth. You recognize tension without letting it hijack your nervous system. This is not emotional avoidance. It is emotional skill. Absorbing is automatic for most people. Someone speaks sharply and your body tightens. Someone withdraws and your mind fills the silence with fear. Someone disagrees and your confidence wavers. These reactions feel instant because they are conditioned. The nervous system reacts before awareness arrives. Observation slows. The process when you observe, you create space between stimulus and response. In that space, the emotional charge begins to soften. You are no longer inside the reaction. You are watching it happen. This position is where calm lives. Observation begins in the body. Before the mind creates stories, the body reacts. The chest tightens. The stomach knots. The breath shortens. Learning to notice these sensations without immediately interpreting them is foundational. Sensation does not need explanation to pass. When you feel something arise and immediately ask, "What does this mean?" you absorb. When you say this is a sensation and stay with it, you observe. This distinction retrains the nervous system. Observation also applies to thoughts. Thoughts often arrive as conclusions. They feel authoritative. They say, "This is bad, this is dangerous, this is about you." When you absorb thoughts, you believe them automatically. When you observe thoughts, you see them as mental events rather than facts. A thought can be present without being obeyed. This is one of the most freeing realizations you can have. You do not need to fight thoughts. You do not need to suppress them. You simply do not need to identify with them. Observation gives you this choice. When someone is emotional around you, observation becomes essential. Without it, you mirror their state. Their anxiety becomes yours. Their anger activates you. Their stress infects your nervous system. With observation, you recognize that emotion is present, but not owned by you. You might notice their tone, their posture, their intensity. You do not need to take it inside. You do not need to fix it. You do not need to react to it. You stay present without merging. This is emotional leadership, people who can observe without absorbing, stabilize environments. They bring calm not by forcing it, but by embodying it. Others unconsciously regulate around them. Observation also protects you from projection. When someone projects frustration, insecurity, or fear onto you, observation allows you to see it clearly. You recognize that the emotional charge does not match the situation. This awareness prevents personalization. You no longer ask, "What is wrong with me?" You ask, "What is happening here?" That question alone dissolves much suffering. Another key aspect of observation is allowing emotion to complete its cycle. Emotions are designed to rise, move, and fall. Absorption freezes them. Observation lets them flow. When you stop interfering, emotions resolve themselves. This is why trying to get rid of emotion often makes it stronger. Resistance is absorption in disguise. Observation says, "I can allow this without becoming it." Learning this takes practice. At first, you may notice yourself absorbing before you observe. This is normal. Each moment of awareness strengthens the skill. You do not need perfection. You need repetition. Another important area is observing your need to react. The urge to explain, defend, justify, or fix often arises quickly. Observation allows you to notice the urge without acting on it immediately. Many urges dissolve when not obeyed. Silence is often the result of observation. Not awkward silence, but grounded silence. Silence that comes from clarity rather than fear. Observation also changes how you listen. Instead of listening to respond, you listen to understand. You do not interrupt emotionally. You do not prepare defenses. You receive information without distortion. This deepens connection. While preserving boundaries, observation does not make you passive. It makes you precise. When you do speak or act, it comes from clarity rather than reactivity. Your words land differently. Your presence feels different. Another layer of observation is self-observation without judgment. You notice when you are triggered without criticizing yourself. Judgment tightens absorption. Curiosity loosens it. You say something is happening instead of something is wrong. This attitude accelerates. Growth observation also helps you disengage from emotional contagion in environments filled with drama, negativity, or chaos. You can be in the room without being in the storm. You do not need to match intensity to be present. This ability preserves energy and mental health. One of the most liberating outcomes of observation is realizing how little you actually need to do. Many emotional reactions resolve on their own when not fed. You stop trying to manage everything internally. You allow experience to move. This reduces overthinking significantly. Observation also creates confidence. When you trust your ability to remain steady, you stop fearing emotional moments. Fear of emotion is what drives absorption. When fear fades, absorption loses power. This is why emotionally mature people appear calm. Not because they feel less, but because they observe more. As this part closes, understand this deeply. Observation is not distance. It is intimacy with reality without distortion. It is the ability to be fully present without being overwhelmed. Learning to observe without absorbing is one of the most valuable skills you will ever develop. It allows you to stay open without being wounded, calm without being numb, strong without being rigid, and once this skill becomes natural, emotional detachment no longer feels like effort. It feels like freedom. One of the deepest reasons emotional detachment feels difficult is because so much of human behavior is driven by the need for validation. Approval feels like safety. Recognition feels like worth. Agreement feels like belonging. When these needs go unmet, emotional tension arises. The nervous system reacts as if something essential is missing. To practice emotional detachment, you must understand this clearly. The need for validation is not weakness. It is conditioning. It formed early when approval meant security and disapproval meant risk. As a child, being seen, accepted, and affirmed was necessary. As an adult, that same dependency quietly becomes a source of suffering. Validation feels good, but dependence on it creates instability. When your emotional state depends on how others respond to you, your inner world becomes fragile. A compliment lifts you. A critique deflates you. Silence unsettles you. Inconsistency creates anxiety. You are constantly monitoring reactions and adjusting yourself to maintain approval. This constant adjustment disconnects you from yourself. Releasing the need for validation does not mean rejecting connection or becoming indifferent to others. It means you stop outsourcing your sense of worth. You move the source of stability inward. The shift is uncomfortable at first because the nervous system is used to looking outward for confirmation. When that confirmation is no longer sought, anxiety may arise. This anxiety is not danger. It is withdrawal from dependency. Staying present through this discomfort is essential. Validation seeking often hides behind subtle behaviors. Over-explaining, apologizing unnecessarily, seeking reassurance, replaying conversations, trying to be understood by everyone. These behaviors are attempts to regulate internal insecurity through external response. Emotional detachment interrupts this pattern. You begin to notice the urge to explain yourself and pause. You feel the desire for reassurance and stay with it. You notice the discomfort of not being immediately affirmed and allow it to pass. Each time you do this, you strengthen inner security. Releasing the need for approval also changes how you interpret feedback. Feedback becomes information rather than judgment. You can listen without bracing. You can consider without collapsing. You can accept what is useful and discard what is not. This discernment is freedom. Approval dependence often keeps people silent. They avoid speaking honestly because disagreement feels threatening. Detachment allows you to speak from clarity rather than fear. You no longer need consensus to remain grounded. This does not make you confrontational. It makes you authentic. Another powerful shift occurs in relationships. When you no longer need validation from others, you stop overgiving. You stop performing. You stop bending yourself to maintain connection. Relationships become cleaner and more balanced. You show up as you are rather than who you think you need to be. Some relationships may change as a result. People who benefited from your need for approval may feel uncomfortable. This discomfort is not harm. It is adjustment. Stay grounded. Releasing validation, dependence also reduces emotional reactivity. When someone disagrees or withdraws, it no longer feels like a threat to your worth. It feels like information about them or the situation. This clarity prevents unnecessary emotional spirals. Another important realization is that validation never truly satisfies. Even when you receive it, the relief is temporary. The mind quickly looks for the next confirmation. This cycle never ends until the dependency ends. Inner validation creates lasting stability. Inner validation does not mean constant self-praise. It means self-recognition. You acknowledge your effort, intentions, and values regardless of external response. You become your own reference point. This reference point stabilizes your emotional world. Releasing the need for approval also restores presence. When you are not monitoring reactions, you are fully in the moment. You listen more deeply. You respond more naturally. You stop performing yourself. Presence is magnetic. People feel it. Another subtle benefit is reduced resentment. Validation seeking often leads to unspoken expectations. When those expectations are unmet, resentment builds. Detachment removes these hidden contracts. You give and engage because you choose to not, because you expect something in return. This choice restores integrity. Emotional detachment does not remove the desire for connection. It purifies it. Connection becomes mutual rather than transactional. You relate from fullness rather than need. This makes connection stronger, not weaker. Releasing approval dependence also strengthens resilience. When criticism comes, you do not crumble. When praise comes, you do not inflate. You remain steady. This steadiness allows growth. You learn without shame. Another key aspect is accepting that not everyone will understand or approve of you. This is not a flaw. It is reality. Trying to be universally approved is impossible and exhausting. Detachment frees you from this impossible task. You become selective rather than reactive. This selectivity protects your energy. You invest where alignment exists. You disengage where it does not. You do this calmly, without hostility. As this part closes, understand this truth deeply. The need for validation is a habit, not a requirement. It can be softened. It can be released. When you stop asking others to confirm your worth, you stop giving them power over your peace. And from that place, emotional detachment becomes natural. You are no longer bracing for approval. You are simply present. And that presence is enough. One of the greatest tests of emotional detachment is not what happens inside you, but what happens around you. Other people's emotions can be intense, unpredictable, and overwhelming. Anger, anxiety, stress, fear, and frustration have a way of pulling others into their orbit. Without awareness, you absorb these states automatically. Your nervous system mirrors what it senses. Calm disappears without your consent. Learning to stay calm when others are emotional is not about emotional superiority. It is about emotional stability. It is the ability to remain grounded even when someone else is not. This skill protects your peace more than almost anything else. Most people believe emotions are contagious and unavoidable. They assume that if someone is angry, the environment must become tense. If someone is anxious, everyone must feel unsettled. If someone is stressed, the room must reflect it. This belief gives away power. You are not required to match emotional intensity to be present. Staying calm begins with understanding this truth. Other people's emotions are experiences happening inside them. They are not commands. They are not instructions. They are not responsibilities you must take on. The moment you believe you must regulate someone else's emotions, you lose control of your own. Many people learned early that peace depended on managing others. They learned to anticipate moods, soften reactions, and prevent conflict. This pattern may have helped once, but now it creates exhaustion. Emotional detachment teaches you a different approach. You allow others to have their emotions without joining them. This does not mean you become dismissive or uncaring. It means you stop confusing empathy with absorption. You can understand someone's emotional state without letting it destabilize you. Calm in the presence of emotion starts in the body. When someone around you becomes emotional, your body reacts first. Muscles tighten. Breath shortens. Heart rate increases. This happens before thought. The key is to notice these reactions without immediately acting on them. Awareness interrupts contagion. When you notice your body activating, you slow your breath. You ground your attention. You feel your feet or your posture. These small actions tell your nervous system that there is no immediate threat. Regulation begins internally. If you skip this step and move straight to thinking, your mind will amplify the emotion. Thoughts will race. Interpretation will escalate. Calm will disappear. Regulation must come before reasoning. Another powerful shift is letting go of the need to fix. When others are emotional, the urge to fix arises quickly. You want to calm them, reassure them, explain, or solve. This urge is often driven by your own discomfort, not their need. You feel uneasy, so you try to change the situation. Detachment allows you to sit with discomfort without reacting. You listen without rushing. You stay present without managing outcomes. Often this alone reduces emotional intensity. People calm down faster when they are not being emotionally mirrored or controlled. Staying calm also means resisting the urge to personalize emotional expression. When someone is angry, frustrated, or anxious, your mind may assume you are the cause. This assumption triggers defensiveness or guilt. Observation corrects this distortion. You ask what is happening for them, not what did I do wrong. This shift keeps your nervous system stable. Another important skill is emotional pacing. You do not need to match speed, intensity, or urgency. If someone is speaking rapidly, you can respond slowly. If someone is escalating, you can remain measured. Your pace influences the interaction more than you realize. Calm is contagious when it is genuine. Staying calm does not mean suppressing your own feelings. It means choosing when and how to express them. You can acknowledge impact without escalating. You can set boundaries without anger. You can disengage without hostility. Emotional detachment gives you this choice. Another challenge arises when others direct emotion at you. Accusation, criticism, or blame can feel intense. Without detachment, you react automatically. You defend, explain, or counterattack. With detachment, you pause. You listen for information, not threat. You recognize that emotional expression often carries more about the speaker than the situation. This awareness creates space. You respond from clarity rather than injury. Sometimes the most powerful response is silence. Not avoidance, but grounded silence. Silence that says, I am present and stable. This often disrupts escalation because it removes fuel. You do not need to win emotional battles. You need to remain intact. Staying calm also requires accepting that you cannot regulate everyone. Some people are not ready to self-regulate. They may want reaction, conflict, or validation. Detachment allows you to disengage without guilt. Disengagement is not rejection. It is self-respect. You are allowed to step back from emotional chaos. You are allowed to protect your nervous system. Calm is not something you owe to others. It is something you cultivate for yourself. Another subtle aspect of calm is releasing urgency. Emotional situations often feel urgent. The mind says this must be resolved now. Detachment questions this assumption. Not everything requires immediate response. Time often brings clarity. Pausing is powerful. Calm also improves communication. When you are regulated, your voice steadies. Your words are clearer. Your presence feels safe. Others sense this even if they do not consciously understand it. This presence often shifts dynamics without effort. Staying calm does not mean tolerating disrespect. Detachment actually strengthens boundaries. You can say no firmly without anger. You can assert needs without hostility. This calm firmness is far more effective than emotional reaction. Another benefit of staying calm is self-trust. Each time you remain steady in emotional situations, you reinforce the belief that you can handle intensity. Fear decreases. Confidence grows. You stop fearing emotional encounters because you know how to remain grounded within them. This confidence changes how you approach life. You no longer avoid difficult conversations. You no longer dread conflict. You no longer brace for emotional storms. You face them with steadiness. As you practice this skill, you may notice that some people react differently to you. Some may calm down. Others may push harder. Stay grounded. This is not a test you need to pass. It is a pattern adjusting. Your responsibility is not to manage others. It is to manage yourself. Staying calm when others are emotional is one of the clearest signs of emotional maturity. It is not about being detached from humanity. It is about being anchored within yourself. As this part closes, remember this. You do not need to absorb emotional storms to be present. You do not need to react to prove you care. You do not need to match intensity to be engaged. Calm is not withdrawal. Calm is leadership. And the more you embody it, the less power emotional chaos has over your life. Inner security is the foundation that makes emotional detachment real and sustainable. Without it, detachment feels forced, artificial, and fragile. You may try to stay calm or detached, but underneath there is tension, fear, or suppression. True emotional detachment grows naturally when inner security is strong. Inner security is what allows you to remain steady without effort, present without fear, and open without being destabilized. Inner security is the deep internal knowing that you can handle your inner world. Not because you are invincible, but because you are capable. It is the sense that no emotion, thought, or experience will destroy you. This does not mean life will not hurt. It means pain will not define or control you. Most people search for security outside themselves. They look for it in relationships, stability routines, success, certainty, approval, and reassurance. These things can feel comforting, but they are unreliable. People change, circumstances shift, and outcomes are never guaranteed. When security is built on external factors, emotional detachment becomes nearly impossible, because your peace depends on conditions staying the same. Inner security removes this dependency. When security comes from within, you no longer need the world to behave perfectly for you to feel okay. You remain grounded even when things are uncertain. This stability changes everything. Building inner security begins with self-trust. Self-trust is not confidence in outcomes. It is confidence in your ability to respond. It is the belief that whatever arises, you can meet it with awareness and care. Many people lack self-trust because they learned early that their emotions were overwhelming, unacceptable, or dangerous. They may have been told to calm down, stop crying, or not make a fuss. Over time, they learned to doubt their emotional experience. They learned to seek regulation from others rather than developing it internally. This creates emotional dependence. Emotional detachment requires reversing this pattern by slowly rebuilding trust in your ability to feel without falling apart. You do this not by forcing calm, but by staying present with discomfort. When an emotion arises, instead of escaping it, distracting yourself, or seeking reassurance, you remain. You breathe. You notice sensations. You allow the emotion to exist without interpretation. Each time you do this, you send a powerful message to your nervous system. I can handle this. I am safe with myself. This is how self-trust is built. Not through affirmations, but through experience. Inner security also grows when you stop judging your emotional responses. Self-judgment erodes trust. When you criticize yourself for feeling anxious, sad, angry, or reactive, you reinforce the belief that your inner world is unsafe. Compassion repairs this damage. You begin to speak to yourself differently. You say something is happening, and I can take care of it. You do not shame yourself for being human. This kindness is not weakness. It is regulation. Another crucial element of inner security is consistency with yourself. You build trust the same way trust is built in relationships, through reliability. When you honor your needs, set boundaries, and follow through on what you say you will do, you become someone you can rely on. When you repeatedly abandon yourself, ignore your limits, or override your values, self-trust weakens. Emotional detachment then feels hollow because internally there is instability. Inner security strengthens when your actions align with your values. This alignment creates internal coherence. Coherence creates calm. Another major obstacle to inner security is perfectionism. Perfectionism often disguises itself as high standards, but at its core, it is fear. Fear of being inadequate. Fear of making mistakes. Fear of losing approval. Perfectionism creates constant self-monitoring and tension. Detachment requires releasing the belief that you must respond perfectly. You allow yourself to be imperfect and still worthy. You accept that mistakes do not define you. They inform you. When perfectionism loosens, inner security grows because the inner environment becomes safer. Inner security also develops through emotional ownership. You stop blaming others for how you feel, and you stop blaming yourself for feeling. You recognize that emotions arise from internal processes influenced by external events. You take responsibility for responding rather than assigning fault. This ownership restores agency. You move from saying they made me feel this way to something is activated and I will care for it. This shift removes helplessness. Inner security also involves learning to trust your awareness more than your thoughts. Thoughts often sound urgent, convincing, and absolute, especially when emotions are present. Without self-trust, you obey them automatically. With self-trust, you observe them. You recognize that thoughts are interpretations, not commands. You do not need to silence them. You simply do not need to follow them. This discernment quiets mental noise. Another important aspect of inner security is tolerance for uncertainty. Many people become emotionally reactive because they cannot tolerate not knowing. They seek certainty as a form of safety. When certainty is unavailable, anxiety arises. Inner security teaches you that uncertainty is uncomfortable but not dangerous. You learn to sit with not knowing without spiraling. You trust that clarity will come when needed. This tolerance reduces anxiety at its root. Inner security also transforms how you experience relationships. When you trust yourself, you stop clinging to others for stability. You engage freely rather than desperately. You can be close without merging. You can love without gripping. This creates healthier connections. You stop fearing abandonment because you know you will still be okay. This does not make loss painless, but it makes it survivable. Inner security also changes how you respond to criticism and conflict. Without it, criticism feels threatening. With it, criticism becomes information. You can listen without bracing. You can reflect without collapsing. You decide what applies and what does not. This decision-making reinforces self-trust. Another layer of inner security is learning to regulate your nervous system. Regulation is the ability to return to calm after activation. This includes breathing, grounding movement, rest, and pacing. When your nervous system trusts that calm is accessible, emotional intensity decreases. Regulation is not suppression. It is recovery. Each time you return to baseline, you strengthen the belief that you can handle activation. This belief builds inner security. Inner security also requires permission to slow down. Many people rush emotional processing because discomfort feels urgent. They want resolution immediately. This urgency often increases distress. Detachment allows you to say, "I will come back to this later." This patience reduces pressure and creates clarity. Another important element is self-permission. You give yourself permission to feel what you feel, to change your mind, to rest, to disengage, to say no. This permission reduces internal conflict. Internal conflict is one of the biggest drains on emotional stability. When you stop fighting yourself, inner security strengthens naturally. As inner security grows, you may notice something subtle but profound. Even when emotions arise, there is a sense of ground underneath. You feel waves, but you are not swept away. There is space inside experience. This space is detachment, supported by trust. You no longer fear emotions because you know how to hold them. Fear of emotion is what gives emotion power. When fear fades, intensity softens. Inner security also allows joy to return. When you are not constantly bracing against emotional pain, you become available for pleasure connection. Curiosity and creativity. Life feels fuller, not flatter. Detachment without inner security feels empty. Detachment with inner security feels alive. Another important shift occurs in how you relate to time. When inner security is strong, you are less trapped by past regrets or future fears. You return to the present more easily. The present is where stability lives. Inner security also improves decision-making. When you trust yourself, you do not second-guess constantly. You make choices and adjust if needed. This flexibility reduces anxiety. You stop needing guarantees before acting. As inner security strengthens, emotional detachment becomes effortless. You are not trying to detach. You simply are not pulled. Reactivity fades. Presence increases. This is not because life becomes easier, but because you become steadier. As this part closes, understand this deeply. Emotional detachment is not built by distancing yourself from emotion. It is built by becoming a safe place for emotion to arise. When you trust yourself, emotions lose their threat. When emotions lose their threat, calm becomes natural. And when calm becomes natural, emotional detachment stops being something you do and becomes who you are. Healthy boundaries are not barriers meant to keep people away. They are not punishments, threats, or acts of rejection. Healthy boundaries are acts of self-respect. They define where you end and where others begin. Without boundaries, emotional detachment collapses. Because you are constantly pulled into dynamics that drain, confuse, or overwhelm you. Many people struggle with boundaries not because they do not understand them, intellectually, but because boundaries trigger guilt, fear, and anxiety. They worry that setting limits makes them selfish, cold, difficult, or unkind. This fear keeps them overextended, emotionally available at their own expense, and trapped in patterns of resentment. Healthy boundaries are not about pushing others away. They are about staying connected to yourself. When boundaries are weak, you absorb emotions, responsibilities, and expectations that do not belong to you. You say yes when you mean no. You listen when you are exhausted. You tolerate behavior that quietly erodes your peace. Over time, this leads to burnout, emotional reactivity, and withdrawal. Boundaries prevent this damage before it happens. One of the biggest reasons boundaries feel difficult is conditioning. Many people learned early that love required compliance, that being good meant being agreeable, that saying no led to conflict, withdrawal, or punishment. The nervous system learned that boundaries were unsafe. As an adult, this conditioning shows up as guilt when you assert yourself and fear when you consider disappointing others. Emotional detachment requires gently retraining this response. The first step is understanding that boundaries are not about controlling others. They are about controlling your participation. You cannot make people behave differently, but you can choose what you allow access to. This choice is empowering. Healthy boundaries begin internally before they are ever spoken. An internal boundary is the decision that your emotions, time, energy, and values matter. Without this internal clarity, external boundaries feel shaky and inconsistent. When you are clear inside, your boundaries come out calmly. Internal boundaries also mean you stop negotiating with yourself. You stop convincing yourself to tolerate what feels wrong. You stop minimizing your needs. This honesty builds self-trust. External boundaries then become expressions of internal alignment rather than reactions to frustration. Another reason boundaries trigger guilt is the fear of being seen as selfish. This fear is based on a misunderstanding. Selfishness is prioritizing yourself at the expense of others without regard. Boundaries are prioritizing yourself with regard. They allow you to engage without self-abandonment. In fact, boundaries often improve relationships. When resentment is removed, connection becomes cleaner. Guilt often arises because you are breaking an old pattern. The nervous system interprets this as danger. Guilt does not mean you are doing something wrong. It means you are doing something unfamiliar. Staying grounded through guilt is part of building emotional detachment. Fear also arises around boundaries because of imagined consequences. You fear rejection, conflict, or abandonment. While some relationships may change, many improve when clarity is introduced. And those that rely on your lack of boundaries were already unstable. Healthy boundaries reveal rather than destroy relationships. Another important aspect of boundaries is recognizing emotional responsibility. You are responsible for your feelings, actions, and choices. You are not responsible for managing how others feel about your boundaries. This distinction is critical. When you set a boundary, someone may feel disappointed, upset, or frustrated. That does not mean you have done harm. It means they are experiencing emotion. Allowing others to have their reactions without fixing them is emotional maturity. Boundaries collapse when you rush to soothe others at the expense of yourself. Learning to tolerate others' discomfort without absorbing it strengthens detachment. Boundaries also require clarity about your limits. Many people do not know their limits because they ignore them. Limits are revealed through fatigue, irritation, and resentment. These are signals, not failures. When you notice resentment, it is often a sign that a boundary is needed. Healthy boundaries are proactive, not reactive. Instead of waiting until frustration explodes, you respond early. You say no before resentment builds. You step back before burnout occurs. This prevents emotional escalation. Another key aspect of boundaries is simplicity. You do not need long explanations. Over-explaining often comes from guilt and fear of disapproval. A clear, calm statement is enough. You are allowed to say no without justification. This simplicity feels uncomfortable at first, but becomes freeing with practice. Boundaries also include time boundaries. You do not need to be constantly available. You do not need to respond immediately. You are allowed to take space. Space is not rejection. It is regulation. Time boundaries protect your nervous system. Emotional boundaries are equally important. You can listen without taking responsibility. You can empathize without absorbing. You can support without rescuing. This balance preserves energy. Another crucial boundary is between past and present. Old patterns often pull you into roles you no longer need to play. You are allowed to change. You are allowed to respond differently. You do not owe consistency to outdated versions of yourself. This freedom strengthens identity. Boundaries also involve knowing when to disengage. Not every conversation needs continuation. Not every dynamic needs resolution. Sometimes the healthiest choice is to step back quietly. Disengagement is not avoidance when done consciously. It is self-protection. Healthy boundaries also improve emotional detachment by reducing reactivity. When limits are clear, fewer situations trigger you. You stop putting yourself in positions that require constant emotional labor. This creates calm. Another important piece is self-permission. You must give yourself permission to prioritize your well-being. Many people wait for others to approve of their boundaries. This approval may never come. Detachment means acting in alignment regardless. You validate yourself first. Boundaries also strengthen self-respect. Each time you honor your limits, you reinforce the belief that you matter. This belief stabilizes your inner world. Self-respect reduces the need for external validation. As boundaries strengthen, emotional detachment becomes easier. You are no longer constantly exposed. You control access to your inner world. This does not make you rigid. Healthy boundaries are flexible. They adjust based on context, values, and capacity. Rigidity comes from fear. Flexibility comes from trust. Boundaries also change how you experience conflict. Instead of emotional explosions, you have calm limits. You do not threaten. You do not plead. You state and follow through. This consistency builds credibility. Another subtle benefit of boundaries is reduced guilt over time. As the nervous system learns that nothing terrible happens when you assert yourself, guilt fades. Confidence replaces it. Boundaries also protect your energy for what matters. When you stop leaking energy through overcommitment, you have more to give intentionally. This intentional giving feels nourishing rather than draining. Healthy boundaries do not isolate you. They allow deeper connection because you are not hiding resentment. You show up honestly. Others feel this honesty. Some people may resist your boundaries. This resistance reveals dynamics that relied on your lack of limits. Stay grounded. This is not a problem to fix. Your responsibility is to remain aligned, not to manage reactions. As this part closes, remember this truth. Boundaries are not acts of separation. They are acts of alignment. They keep you connected to yourself so you can connect to others without losing your center. Healthy boundaries remove guilt by replacing it with clarity. They remove fear by replacing it with trust. And when boundaries are strong, emotional detachment becomes natural because you are no longer constantly overexposed. You are present, open, and grounded. This is not distance. This is self-respect. Emotional detachment reaches its fullest expression when it becomes a way of living rather than a technique you apply. At this stage, you are no longer constantly working to stay calm or reminding yourself not to react. Calm begins to arise naturally. Presence becomes familiar. Peace stops feeling fragile. This is what it means to live emotionally free. Living emotionally free does not mean life becomes easy or free of challenge. It means challenge no longer owns you. You move through experiences without being trapped inside them. You feel deeply without being consumed. You engage fully without losing yourself. This freedom begins when you stop living inside interpretation and return to direct experience. Much of human suffering comes not from what happens, but from the constant commentary about what happens. The mind narrates, judges, predicts, and personalizes. Emotional freedom quiets this narration by grounding you in the present moment. The present moment is where peace lives. When you are present, you are not replaying the past or rehearsing the future. You are here with what is actually happening. In this space, most imagined threats disappear. What remains is manageable. Living present requires trust. Trust that you can handle what is in front of you. Trust that you do not need to anticipate everything to be safe. Trust that clarity will arise when needed. This trust is built through everything you have practiced so far. Observation without absorption. Releasing validation. Staying calm in emotional environments. Building inner security. Setting healthy boundaries. All of these skills converge here. Emotional freedom also means your inner state is no longer constantly reactive to external conditions. Praise does not inflate you. Criticism does not collapse you. Silence does not unsettle you. Change does not threaten you. You still notice these things. You simply do not identify with them. This non-identification is the core of emotional freedom. You stop confusing experiences with identity. You stop saying this happened, therefore I am something. You recognize that life is movement, not definition. When you live this way, you become lighter internally. You carry less emotional residue from interactions. Conversations end when they end. Moments pass when they pass. You do not drag emotional weight from one situation into the next. This lightness restores energy. With more energy, you become more engaged, not less. Emotional freedom does not make you passive. It makes you available. You are present for joy, creativity, connection, and curiosity because you are not constantly defending your inner world. Another hallmark of emotional freedom is choice. You choose when to engage and when to disengage. You choose what to invest in emotionally. You choose what deserves your attention. This choice replaces compulsion. Compulsion is reacting automatically. Freedom is responding intentionally. Living emotionally free also changes how you experience uncertainty. Instead of anxiety, you feel openness. Instead of tension, you feel curiosity. You stop demanding guarantees from life. You meet life as it unfolds. This does not mean recklessness. It means adaptability. Adaptability is one of the strongest forms of intelligence. Emotionally free people adapt because they are not rigidly attached to outcomes. They can adjust without panic. They can pivot without identity crisis. They can let go without collapse. This flexibility creates resilience. Resilience allows you to move forward after disappointment without bitterness. You learn without self-blame. You integrate without rumination. You recover without drama. Another important aspect of emotional freedom is peace with imperfection. You stop demanding flawless emotional responses from yourself. You allow mistakes and missteps. You repair when needed and move on. This self-forgiveness stabilizes your inner world. Living emotionally free also deepens relationships. You stop using others to regulate your emotions. You stop expecting them to complete you. You show up whole. Connection becomes choice rather than need. This choice creates healthier bonds. You can be close without merging. You can care without clinging. You can support without sacrificing yourself. Emotional freedom also brings clarity of values. When emotional noise quiets, you hear yourself more clearly. You know what matters and what does not. You stop engaging in conflicts that drain you. You invest in what aligns with your values. This alignment creates meaning. Meaning does not come from constant stimulation. It comes from congruence between who you are and how you live. Living emotionally free also transforms how you handle stress. Stress still arises, but it does not dominate. You recognize stress as a signal, not a threat. You respond with regulation rather than panic. This response preserves health and focus. Another sign of emotional freedom is the ability to be alone without discomfort. You enjoy your own presence? Silence does not feel empty. Solitude feels grounding. This comfort with yourself reduces dependence on distraction and validation. Emotionally free people also experience joy differently. Joy is quieter, more stable, less frantic. It does not depend on highs or constant excitement. It emerges naturally when the mind is not overloaded. Joy becomes accessible in ordinary moments. Living emotionally free also means you stop explaining yourself excessively. You speak when it matters. You remain silent when it does not. You do not feel compelled to convince everyone of your intentions. This restraint feels like confidence. You also become less predictable emotionally. Not because you are guarded, but because you are regulated. Others cannot easily provoke you. Emotional manipulation loses its power. This protection is not defensive. It is grounded. Another important shift is how you relate to time. You stop rushing emotional processes. You allow understanding to unfold. You trust that not everything needs immediate resolution. This patience reduces anxiety significantly. Living emotionally free also means accepting that discomfort is part of life. You stop trying to eliminate it. You stop interpreting it as failure. You allow it to come and go. Discomfort loses its intensity when it is not resisted. This acceptance creates peace even in difficult circumstances. Emotionally free people also have clearer boundaries around attention. They do not give energy to every thought, feeling, or external demand. They choose where attention goes. Attention is life force. Protecting it is essential. When you protect your attention, you protect your peace. Living emotionally free does not mean you never feel pain. It means pain no longer defines you. It moves through you rather than living inside you. Grief comes and goes. Fear arises and fades. Anger appears and resolves. None of these become identity. This fluidity is emotional health. As emotional freedom stabilizes, you may notice something subtle. You laugh more easily. You breathe more deeply. You experience moments without narrating them. Life feels closer. This closeness is presence. Presence is the true goal of emotional detachment. Not distance from life, but intimacy with it without suffering. As this journey comes to a close, remember this truth. You were never meant to carry the emotional weight of everything that happens around you. You are meant to experience life, respond wisely, and remain intact. You do not need to harden yourself to be strong. You need to ground yourself. You do not need to care less. You need to identify less. When you stop taking everything personally, life does not become colder. It becomes clearer. And in that clarity, calm freedom and quiet strength naturally arise. This is the art of emotional detachment, not as an escape from feeling, but as a return to peace. And from this place, you are finally free to live fully.